Today is an unusual day. Before anything else, I apologize. My XLR microphone has finally died on me, so I can't really do anything about that, and this video is being recorded on a blue snowball from God knows how fucking long ago, so sorry about that. Most of the time, I play a few games, I break them down based on what I know and what I see, and I'll tell you whether or not I think they're worth playing. But the point of this video is to cut through the bulk of the information. There are some of you out there who don't want to go back and sit through all of the videos in the series, and even though I recommend doing that, I understand why you don't want to. So this one's for you guys. This is my top 10 obscure action sports games. Let me tell you how this is going to work and what I mean by obscure. We'll go through this list in order from games I recommend the least to games I recommend the most. And when I say the word obscure, I don't mean I'm excluding games that exist inside of a popular series, but you won't see any generic shit here. No Skate series, no Tony Hawk series, no SSX trilogy, none of that shit. I want to spotlight the games that players either miss or completely forget about. So no more nonsense. Let's get started. Coming in at number 10 is Freestyle MetalX, developed by Debus Studios and published by Midway in 2003. I covered this game in a video back in February of 24, and even though it's one of my shorter videos, I recommend checking it out because it was a good opportunity to talk more about PCSX2 and a real PS2 and how they handle physics differently. Freestyle MetalX is exactly what it sounds like. It's a freestyle motocross tech fantasy game with all of the bells and whistles we're accustomed to, but it's lower on the list because it's sort of a mishmash of ideas. It doesn't directly draw influence from one game. Instead, we get some Z-axis ideas, some Neversoft ideas, some EA Sports big ideas, and it's all compiled on top of what is really a physics engine tech demonstration. That's really why I recommend this game. There's a free flip and roll physics engine, and it's easily one of the most impressive programming accomplishments from the PS2 era. I gave this one a 7 out of 10 because it's a little clunky, it has some bugs, and it left room for a good sequel without ever actually getting a sequel. Worth checking out, but we've got way better things to see, so let's move on. At number 9 is a game that I could put a little higher, but some of the ideas are things I know aren't for everybody. Wakeboarding Unleashed, originally meant to be Shaun Murray's Pro Wakeboarder, developed by Shaba Games and published by Activision in 2003. Prior to making that video, I had no clue what wakeboarding was or how it worked, so for me personally, it was a good lesson with a lot of information about a great sport I was unfamiliar with. It's very in line with the other Activision O2 sports games, which means it's a pro skater style game remodeled to fit the wakeboarding idea. The major mechanic that stands out is movement in general. Half of the game takes place with the player following this on-rails path behind the boat, and the other half is breakaway moments where you let go of the boat and you have some freedom to surf around on a good variety of level objects. There's a limit to how long you can move freely without the boat, and it'd be kinda hard to manage long combos between the two. But the feeling is familiar for THPS series veterans, and the freedom restrictions completely change the atmosphere and how the game feels to play. So, like I said, I understand that this game isn't for everyone, but if you like that series and you're looking for a challenge, it's a really good way to go. I gave it an 8 out of 10, that's a personal rating. Looking back, I don't think I would change it. I actually probably would take 1 point away because I know for a fact it's not for everybody, but it's still a really good game. Next up at number 8, we've got MTV Sports Pure Ride, developed by Radical and published by THQ for the PS1 in 2000. I've said a couple of times recently that snowboarding games have kind of a finite line. It's a very easy and simple idea, but that means that there are a lot of creative restrictions. It's usually either great or mediocre with not much room in between. In this case, Pure Ride was the best in its series, and it had a lot of really great ideas combined with good polish. The biggest credit to it is that it doesn't directly compare to other games in terms of controls. It has a unique control scheme that feels comfortable and fluid, and that's laid on top of good-sized courses with cool designs, so you can have fun experimenting with all of it. This is one of the most underplayed and underrated games on the list, and a big part of that is being part of a series that otherwise is just middle of the road. The word obscure rings true here, and I recommend it to anybody who likes snowboarding games. At number 7, we've got a game that I haven't actually covered yet, and it's not the only game on the list that I still haven't made a video about, but you've already seen it used in intro and outro footage. Skate Attack, also known as Skate City Heroes and Skateboard City, developed by Zero Scale and published for the PS2 and PSP in 2007 and the Wii in 2008. The PS2 version, called Skate Attack, is the best version of the game. It never actually came over here to the West, which is unfortunate because it has the best controls and the best visuals. This is one of the games published by Midas, the shovelware company founded by Phoenix Games founder Paul Scher. Phoenix Games was horrible. They didn't really have anything good. Midas was much better. They published a bunch of simple series games. The word shovelware has kind of a bad connotation, and it puts a bad taste in the mouths of gamers. But when I call a game shovelware, I absolutely don't mean it's bad. This is the best example of shovelware done properly. and putting that to the side, it's just a really good game. It's a more kid-friendly skateboarding game with a lot of freedom, some interesting ideas, and it's fully functional and not very buggy. I plan on covering it in the very near future, but for now, I recommend it. It's a good game. Coming in at number 6, we've got a game that is not only extremely well made, but it's also a labor of love and care from somebody who genuinely loves action sports and tech fantasy games. Street Uni X, developed by Daffodil and Friends and published to Steam back in 2024. Daffodil is one of the most dedicated video game developers I've ever seen. A tremendous amount of time and effort and research and attention to fine detail went into this game. I'll admit, the ideas probably aren't for everybody. There are some unicycle-specific limitations that some people just won't gel with, and you always have the assholes that mix political opinions into video games where they don't belong. I don't give a fuck about that stuff. I care specifically about the quality of the games I play, and in this case, there's no denying how impressive Street Uni X really is. It's a historical landmark, being the first freestyle unicycle game ever made, and it was executed really well. If it looks like you would enjoy it, then it's one I recommend. At number 5, we've got Shaun Palmer's Pro Snowboarder, developed by Deersoft and published under the Activision O2 logo in 2001. I don't want to dwell on this too long. It's Pro Skater 3, but a downhill snowboarding game, and it's really good. I don't have to sell it too much. If you're a fan of the THPS series, and you also like snowboarding, this one is a must-play. I originally covered it alongside Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer back in November of 2023, and I recommend checking that video out if you haven't seen it already. It was a good game. So was Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer, but I think this one was, in terms of gameplay, the better game. At number 4 is a game, again, I still haven't covered, but I've shown it, and I've mentioned it, and I've used it as a direct comparison a few times. Steep Slope Sliders, developed by Cave and published by Victor Interactive for the Sega Saturn in 1997. This game was so fucking far ahead of its time. I don't want to spoil too many thoughts or talk too in-depth yet, but I do want to point out that this is easily one of the best snowboarding games ever made. The physics engine alone stands out as one of the most fluid and well-polished. The obscurity of the Saturn itself didn't help boost the sales numbers here, but being able to emulate games is important, specifically for things like this. It's really obscure, but since this is the age of emulation, I recommend checking it out in RetroArch. I'm not totally sure which core is better, but I use Beetle Saturn for a lot of games, and this works well in that, so that's what I recommend if you decide to. Or just play it on a real Saturn if you have one and can get a hold of it, man, because that's probably the better way to go. At number 3, we've got a game that I didn't even know existed until I started this series. Crusty Demons, developed by Climax Studios and published by Deep Silver in 2006. When I made that video, I said one line that definitively explains the entire thing. This is what BMX XXX could have been. It's a mature-focused freestyle motocross tech fantasy game with a unique physics system, a dedicated Bales system, and a lot of depth and complexity, and a lot of charm. The fans of the Crusty Demons films are the same fans who pointed me in the direction of this game, and I'm glad they did because there really is nothing else like it. It's gnarly, and I recommend it to both fans of racing games and fans of action sports and tech fantasy games. It also looks really good, so it's got that going for it. I gave Crusty Demons an 8 out of 10. Looking back, I'd probably give it a 9 now because I've got a wider spectrum of experience, and it is better than 90% of freestyle motocross games. In the number 2 spot is another game that I haven't covered yet, but you have seen it here once or twice before, and it's technically unfinished business, so I'll probably get to it this season. EA Sports Supercross, developed by Page 44 in 2000. Foremost, there are 2 EA Sports Supercross games for the PS1. The predecessor to this came out in 1999 and was called Supercross 2000. This came out a year later and should have been called Supercross 2001, but it wasn't. Page 44 is a familiar name to some of you, I'm sure. On the positive side of things, they're responsible for the game Freestyle, which is essentially just an EA Sports big version of this game in the same way that Sledstorm Remake was the big version of Sledstorm. On the negative side of things, Page 44 is responsible for the god-awful ports of Project 8 and Proving Ground for the PS2. They should have stuck to the FMX because they were really fucking good at that. And they butchered those Tony Hawk games, dude. They were bad. I don't want to say too much until I get the chance to cover it, but Supercross is one of those games where you'll see the box art and you'll think it's any other generic EA Sports title. Hidden behind the Madden-looking logo is a genuinely amazing Supercross game with a completely separate freestyle mode for the FMX enthusiasts in the audience. It's crisp, it's clean, and it's impressive on a technical level. I actually can't wait to talk more about it because it's one of my favorite games from that era. It's worth checking out. We are almost at number 1, but before that, I have a little bonus. Amateur skateboarder, tech enthusiast, and longtime friend of the channel, Zephyr, has a recommendation of his own, and I've got a few honorable mentions that didn't make the cut. We'll get to the honorable mentions in a minute, but first, here's Zephyr with his take on Go-Go Hypergrind.
My choice is Go-Go Hypergrind for the GameCube. A game that looks like a cartoon but plays like a competitive action sports title. Atlas teamed up with Spumco, the Ren and Stimpy studio, to build a slapstick skateboarding world where every trick is also a gag. Instead of chasing perfect lines in Tony Hawk, Hypergrind pushes you to improvise chaos, catching fire, lighting dynamite, smashing into props mid-combo. The environment isn't just a decoration, it's a part of the scoring system. Mechanically, it's got in-depth manuals, reverts, grinds, and flips are all here, but layered with unique inputs like down grab special and analog rotations that unlock wild tricks. Once you start exploring the deeper pool, the game shifts from a simple skateboarding into a puzzle of how far you can stretch a combo while juggling cartoon hazards. That's where the nerdy side shines. It rewards the players who commit to the learning system. But the heartbeat of Hypergrind is multiplayer. In versus player, you don't get the luxury of a perfect line. Every player has to fight for the same gag triggers, the same explosion props, the same scoring opportunities. That means every match feels alive, unique, unpredictable, and loud. I've seen LAN matches where people who have never even heard of the game were screaming at the top of their lungs because the comedy and competition hits at the same time, and that energy is Hypergrind, and it just brings it to the room. Atlas balanced this beautifully. The slapstick humor makes it approachable for kids and families, but the mechanical depth keeps competitive players hooked. It's easy to pick up at a party, but hard to master when you're chasing high scores or battling friends. That balanced, simple premise, deep mechanics, and multiplayer chaos is why it deserves a spot in the top 10 action sports game. Go-Go Hypergrind is a hidden gem. It was only released in North America, never in Japan, and it still feels fresh today. It's skateboarding, it's comedy, and it's chaos. And it's one of the most unique action sports ever made. If you want a game that makes kids laugh, friends compete, and LAN parties explode with energy, Hypergrind delivers.
And now for some honorable mentions. First is Trans World Surf, which is probably the best surfing game ever made. It's less obscure than the rest of these, and I'm just not as into surfing as I am a lot of other action sports, but I recognize how good it is. Next is Thrasher Skate and Destroy. This one is a cult classic, but it isn't a must-play. There are a lot of mechanics that don't click with a lot of players. It's an acquired taste, so it didn't make it. Next is TJ Lavin's Ultimate BMX. This one didn't make the cut because it's certainly not the best BMX game ever, and I already had an MTV Sports Series game here. But that doesn't mean it's bad, it's still a good game in among the very limited amount of BMX games that are available. It's just not top 10 material. Last is Tony Hawk's Proving Ground. I know, the Tony Hawk series isn't obscure. It's not a series known for obscure gems. It's one of the best-selling series of all time. But one very harsh and very visible reality is that Tony Hawk's Proving Ground didn't sell well. I don't want the list to be a cop-out, so it doesn't get a spot, but I do want to take a minute to recommend Proving Ground Plus. It's a mod that uncaps the frame rate, adds some quality of life features, and it really is the definitive way to play the PS3 version of this game. Finally, in the number one spot, we've got a game that is now very close to my heart, Grind Session, developed by Shaba and published by Sony in 2000. I recommend watching that video, seriously. I tried my best to clarify a lot of misconceptions about the game's mechanics and design, and it deserves respect as its own property that was also way ahead of its time. It's not a THPS clone, that's a hill I will absolutely die on. It's just a really good skateboarding game made by a team that gave it the most respect possible. It's a forgotten piece of video game history that actually did a lot to directly inspire the improvements that were made to Pro Skater 2. It did a lot of things first, it did a lot of things better, and the media are the villains that forced what could have been an amazing series into a premature grade. This is a must-play. This is one of those games that I recommend to just anybody and everybody who likes video games. It's not just an obscure gem. It's a legendary PS1 classic that never gets the respect it deserves. There's nothing that deserves this spot on this list more. Looking back, I would absolutely give this game a 10 out of 10 because it's just extremely solid. And that was my top 10 obscure action sports games, with a few extras thrown in for flavor. Huge thanks to Zephyr for being a part of the video. If you're one of the longtime fans and you've been here for all of this stuff, thank you so much for your long-term support. We've really dug into a lot of shit around here. If you're new, thank you for stopping to check this out. Lists aren't a thing I do really. This is very out of character. So if you came only because of that, then I'm sorry, but hey, I'll probably do another one in the future at some point, because I had fun with this. I recommend going back to watch the videos I made on the games from this list, because most of them have very interesting histories, and they have a lot of ideas that I didn't really have time to get to here. If you want to help contribute to make the show better, and to help me get a new microphone, a link to donate is in the description. Guitar Hero is up next. Y'all know it's coming, so until then, thank you, and have a nice day.
Hang on, Red. Don't forget to mention Omni Obscurium, the podcast that you and I did together, and make sure that they find that because it's such a fun podcast. That's probably here at the end screen, so come on over and give it a listen. Bye, everybody.